You're listening to the Snob OS podcast, the podcast for Apple snobs.
Hey, this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
And yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech.
And welcome to the Snob OS Show, the show for Apple snobs where we talk all things Apple and then some. Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode. Before we jump into it, we definitely want to take a moment to thank you all for your continued support and also to remind you there are a couple of things that you can do to help the show. You can, of course, listen and or watch, also rate and review on any of these platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. Also, if you want to get some exclusive content and also be able to watch the show live, you can become a Patreon supporter, which we lovingly call Snubbis, by heading over to patreon.com/SnobbleScast. So before we get into the show, we're gonna do a little recap of what we have going on this week. Lots to talk about. The UK, they're finally starting to back down from some of those mandates that they put on Apple. It looks like we now have a frontrunner who is going to take over for the Apple Card from Goldman Sachs. Also, we're going to talk a little bit of AI because, of course, we can't talk a single show without AI. But in this respect, researchers have taken a different approach on how to handle AI models' interactions with app UIs. Also, Meta might be trying to change the game on the coding interview cycle, notoriously hard for tech folks. So Meta's approach might help that out a little bit. Also, if you haven't heard, tea was spilled on the tea app, and we
Mm-hmm.
will get into that, and we'll round it out with the hookup with our tech tip of the week. So, and now that you know what's to look forward to, let's go ahead and jump into the lowdown where we talk all things Apple. Up first, the UK looks like they are finally backing down from one of the biggest things that I think we talked about previously that the UK was trying to force Apple to do. We know that the UK in their Digital Markets Act, when it came to the App Store, they've been pushing, pushing, pushing. And one of the things they were really pushing hard for was to force Apple, and Apple only, to create a back door into the cloud systems that would allow the UK government to get access to information on individual users, their data that Apple itself doesn't even have access to. So that's one of those things where it's like, I couldn't see how this was going to happen. We know Apple is super serious about protecting their customers' data. So it sounds like Keir Starmer, who is the prime minister of the UK, which is essentially like their president, um, they are backing down from that after having the article that I'm reading this for. They're trying to give credit to JD Vance and some other officials inside of the Trump administration. I don't fully buy it. We know how huge the tech industry showed up for this administration. And reading some of the statements, I was like, this sounds a little bit too smart. I don't think it's them. But I digress. Either way, so what the UK is doing now is, like I said, they're basically trying to roll back how they were going to approach this because Apple itself said they've already started. I think in the article it said that back in February that Apple did some limitations on what yeah, back in February. Um, Apple withdrew, it says in this article, it says, in response to the demand, Apple withdrew its most secure cloud storage service from the UK, from the entire UK in February, and is now challenging the Home Office's order at the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. So basically, they were like, look, we're not doing this. And since you're trying to push it, we're going to pull that access from the UK. And so I think when they saw that Apple's like, oh, they're going
Call
to
they
actually pull this service,
yeah,
they're
call
going to
they
call our
bluff.
bluff.
Yep.
We're going to pull our service. And they say that they've never given anybody that type of access and they don't plan on it. I think they, like you said, they call their bluff, they call their trump card, and it's like, nah, we're not doing that. And it's so much so that the Meta owned WhatsApp was like, you know what? We're gonna co-sign Apple with this,
Nah, man,
and
shut
we are
up.
going to
Get our face.
join
Shut up.
we're going to
Nobody hear that.
join
Shut up.
Apple's legal challenge
Mm-mm.
in this. So when you got these two when
Mm-mm.
you got Meta trying to jump on this, it's like, wait a minute, they're actually agreeing with something from Apple. It's like,
Nah.
this is crazy.
Yeah, they're saying that the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Not in
Mhm.
this case, because I'm pretty sure Apple rolled their eyes heavy and hard when Meta
Roll them out their
decided
head.
try to jump in on this. Like, yeah, Apple, yeah. It's like, shut up. Don't nobody want to hear it. But
Now you want to jump in
yeah,
after we've
yeah.
been taking all the heat.
After we've been
Because
taking all these
once they
shots,
if they force us to do it, they're coming for you next. They're going after the big dog first, and if they can get the big dog
I'm just
to
talking.
acquiesce, you come next.
I'm just talking about how many low blows Meta and
Ah,
Zuckerberg was throwing at Apple,
yeah.
as regards to the AI, as regards to, all the things that Apple was stumbling over.
The ask app to track thing. That was a
Yeah.
big one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, man, get out of here. Get on. You just trying to jump on the bandwagon. So yeah, but I mean, Apple, they did decide to say, all right, we're gonna put our foot down and we just go where we go. And I'm pretty sure the UK government did not want to or didn't think they were going to be able to plead the case
Mm,
to their citizens as to why this is important when the negative drawback is you not going to get all the features from your beloved phone, from your beloved computer, iPad, iCloud, all these things. Is that the hill you want to die on, right? And I
mm.
don't think the UK wanted to die on that hill with their citizens, because the citizens would have been like, "What? You mean to tell me I can't and it's your fault?" I
Right.
don't know if the UK government was ready for that one. So they was like, let's go ahead, and they put their finger in, lick their mouth, put their finger in the
Take the
air, and
win.
yeah, and the citizens was like, "All right, try that if you want to." And then the UK was like, you right, let's go ahead and back down off this."
Because what's funny is it's not just the fact that Apple pulled the service, but what the UK was trying to do. They were trying to get access. I think that's to me, that's the bigger issue is not that Apple is saying we won't do it. It's the fact that the UK government was seriously trying to
Mm-hmm.
bully Apple into doing it. And to me, it's like, why are you trying to get access to my all the data on my phone that Apple doesn't even have access to? And then of course I want to say, oh, we're trying to help prevent terrorism. Gotta always throw terrorism in there because that usually gets people. And the other
Mm-hmm.
thing is we're trying to prevent child abuse material from going. That's what we're doing. Sure, sure. That's what you're
Right.
doing with that data. That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what you're doing. And I think the UK is already seeing, they recently had tangent a new law regarding I think identification verification for porn sites,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a spike in VPN um,
Mm-hmm.
purchasing of software. I
Sure.
mean, you can see they show the kind of the timeline. It's a huge spike this day that this went into effect, and people's like, mm-mm, you're not gonna catch
Mm-hmm.
me. Nope, 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 nope,
Mm-hmm.
nope. So I think, the UK for a minute was, kind of trying to stomp
Mm-hmm.
like a big dog. And I think they got the idea that they could do this because they, come the lawsuits were like, yeah, we're on their side. And I think they just got a little bit too big for their britches and they got a
Mm-hmm.
little bit too excited. It was like, you know what, we're gonna go for the gusto. We're gonna go for it all. I was like, you stepped over a line too far. So nope, won't be doing
Yeah.
that.
And the story says that the UK government or the UK government's leaders are backing down because they don't want to clash with the Trump administration. But
Mm,
yeah, I don't,
I don't believe that.
them people trying to get elected and trying to get reelected. And the last
Wow.
thing they need is the public sentiment that they ain't feeling you. You'll be out of a
Right.
job quick. So they're like, let's make the people happy. If that means we got to back down on all this heavy handedness with
Yeah.
Apple and them, then it is what it is.
And they're throwing the Trump stuff in there to kind of soften his ego because they know that everything that this guy does is based off of emotion and, trying to placate him some to say, yeah, we're scared of Trump. That's why we're doing this. We're listening to them. They're not doing that. They know that their constituents are going to be like, bro, what the hell? Ain't nobody doing this at all. Next up, we've talked previously about Goldman Sachs wanting to get out of the Apple Card game. We talked earlier this year, American Express was interested, MasterCard, who is the card issuer, was interested. JP Morgan Chase was interested. Well, it appears that there is a favorite and a front runner to take over the Apple Card, and that is JP Morgan Chase. Um, Apparently, the talks have been intensifying this year because I think the Goldman Sachs deal ends in 2026,
Hmm.
or is it the end of this year? Anyway, or is it October? Maybe the end of this year, like October sometime. So it looks like JP Morgan Chase is like taking the front, and that to me makes sense because they are an existing credit card company. Goldman Sachs is not a credit card company. They
Hmm.
are like an investment financial institution, but not on the credit card side of things. And I think they've been off. They didn't realize what they were
Hmm.
fully going into. So it would make sense for the new holder of Apple Card to be a company that actually does credit cards. Again, this is a rumor. Nothing has been finalized, but the sources are saying that JP Morgan Chase um, might be the winner of this. Any
Yeah.
thoughts?
Just hopefully that the way we use the Apple Card or the way you can use an Apple Card doesn't change all that much now that
Hmm.
they're in the market of possibly switching from Goldman Sachs to anybody, let alone
Hmm.
JP Morgan Chase.
Right.
JP Morgan Chase, like you mentioned, is a credit card company. They do have multiple different credit cards, so you would think it would be a just a switch.
Smooth transition. Yeah.
Who's handling the money on the back end. But since JP Morgan Chase is a credit card company, they have a certain way of doing things for their credit cards. Maybe they may, in not force, but maybe encourage strongly that
Hmm.
Apple Card work similar to a JP Morgan Chase card, and that may make things a little bit different for credit card users like us. We may have some problems. Like, for instance, I've got my two daughters as authorized users with all these different things that they can do. Maybe that changes. The cash
Hmm.
back, the Apple savings, maybe
Yeah.
that changes. So hopefully it's just a switch on the back end, and we don't have to get new cards or get new numbers, or the
Yeah.
main things that we do and how we do them change, because that's
Yeah.
the whole reason for the Apple Card. It's an Apple product. It connects to my phone. It connects to my wallet. Makes it easy to do everything on the phone. Hopefully, JP Morgan Chase keeps that going.
Yeah. In what we used to call in IT terms a lift and shift. The ideal way for this is to pick it up from Goldman Sachs, lift it, shift it over, drop it on the JP Morgan Chase, and the end user has no idea that there is anything that even changes. But we'll see
We shall see.
if this does go through and if it is a as seamless as possible. Okay, the last thing in the lowdown, I saw this article a couple of weeks ago, and I've been meaning to drop it into the show, and I completely forgot. I was going to talk about it. I was going to do a post about it, but I was like, let's talk about it on the show. So we always talk about AI. we always talk about um, a lot of times in terms it's usually on the kind of chat GPT front of things, or the text generative um, type of uh, of using AI. But I found this paper, this white paper from Apple researchers, to be interesting because it's a unique spin. When I say unique, unique to the common consensus of what people think AI is. So, Apple created this new study in collaboration with Aalto University in Finland, where it introduces what is called I Love UI, which is basically a vision language model that's trained to understand mobile app interfaces from screenshots and from natural language conversations. Essentially, what that means is typically when you do these large language models, you're usually doing straight text. But this is more of a collaboration where it's an image and text. So what they are trying to achieve with this, there was an existing model that you know worked in the HCI space, which is the human computer interaction. That's where how do we take something that a human would do and make it so that a computer can do it, and how that interaction, how those two things kind of intertwine. So basically, they took this new model that was based on image and text together, they ran it against this existing model, and found that the new model, this I Love UI, actually performed better. There's a lot of, we'll put the link in the show notes. There's a lot of technical jargon behind this on how the different models work, what the different percentages are based on accuracy, precision, and it had all these scorings. But all this to say is this model that they created in collaboration with this university shows that it's more accurate in getting feedback and performing for a UI, say for an app, whether it's an iPhone app. In this particular case, the screenshot that they are showing is like on the settings window. And so ultimately, what this means is when you look through all the jargon, all of the technical lingo, is how this helps the user, and how it helps the user, meaning end users, meaning us who use apps, who use phones. It doesn't have, I say, a direct benefit to the end user. The biggest benefit is for people who create these apps. So it makes it easier for automated testing, which ultimately helps the end user because it gives you a better product. It's also increasing and improving accessibility because it's training, the data is trained on how it can be for all types of users. So that's the biggest output for this, is it helps the developers, the engineers who create these UIs, and the overall benefit is the end user gets a better product.
Well, and especially like you mentioned, end users who use accessibility features on
Mhm.
phones to navigate through the phone, to navigate through apps. If this UI can take screenshots and explain what it's looking at and explain how this app works and explains how the setting works and explains how the UI works, if it can do that, then it could explain to a end user who may be hard of hearing, who maybe have low vision, who may have sensory issues. It then can in turn explain the website or the app to the person trying to use it, who is not just tapping and screening and using gestures. So that's
Right.
what they say behind the accessibility benefits, to where if this UI can explain it to a computer, to a developer, to a whatever, it can also explain it to an end user.
Right. Because it's looking at your different labels, your different text fields, any different captions. If you have an arrow, something that you need to click, or if it's a certain, a bound box, as they call it, a certain space that you have to operate in. So all these things, is, it's able to predict the output. And again, the prediction and the accuracy of the prediction is what's important. Again, it helps with accessibility. You can have a fairly confident um, view that this what is predicting is happening is actually happening. And also, aside from the accessibility part, if you're a developer engineer that's creating this, when you do your testing, of course, there's some manual testing that people always do. But if you're doing repetitive tasks, this helps in the automation of that to be able to give you the benefit to test different features, test different functions and different sequences to give you the best coverage of saying, yes, this app has been fully vetted, has been fully tested, and you've been able to do it automated so that you don't necessarily have to have someone sitting in front of it to try and test it and validate it. So I thought it was really cool to see this particular usage of AI, especially when you're taking two huge components when it comes to creating data sets, creating the models, and running the AI on it, that you're taking both image and text at the same time, working in conjunction together to give users better accessibility and to give creators better ways of creating their apps. So I thought it was cool. It was a different perspective. And, anytime you can really get a white paper on something that is actual functional, something that people actually use, I say it's a win. And people are getting smarter and using this technology that is actually going to have a provable benefit for the way that people are, managing their technology and creating things that we'll use on a day-to-day basis. So that is that. And it's going to wrap up the lowdown. So we're going to head on over into second string where we talk all other tech. Meta, um, one of the big five in the FANG community, is still FANG: Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, even though Facebook moved to the umbrella of Meta. But in any event, as a software engineer, as someone who has done coding interviews, as someone who's proctored coding interviews, a lot of times people make it, I think, unnecessarily hard when you are trying to assess talent for a software engineer, a developer, an architect, a leader, any of those spaces. AI is basically baked into everything that we do, and people are using AI to create code, to create flows, to create architecture, and all these things. And it never really made sense to me that it was such a huge no-no, especially more recently, of using AI assistants in coding interviews. I've done them before, and they have all these different features to try and check your screen and make sure you're not quote unquote cheating. There have been companies that, if you've been found to use any type of AI in your coding interview, or even in your this because they do take home interviews, if you've been found to use AI in any of those, you're automatically disqualified, not only from that position, but from being hired for any other position. It's really, again, quite treacherous. But Meta is now going to allow job candidates to use AI assistants during their code interviews, which makes sense because everybody is using AI tools in the
Are they
actual job.
though? Are they though?
Yes. So, and the way I think of it is, if you use VS Code, which is an IDE, which a lot of people use, you have Copilot. Copilot is a AI assistant in coding. You can start typing out a function, you can give it a description, and it starts as you're typing, it's filling in, it's like the predictive text
Mhm.
behind it. So there you are using that form of AI into a software development tool. And the thing that I think people miss when it comes to this is you you still have to know how to write code. you still have to know what you're doing. The AI assistant is just that, it's an assistant. And where I think people go wrong is they are trying to use the assistant to do the full job. And that's never going to fully work. Even if you tell that, because I've seen people in the whole vibe coding thing, they're creating apps. You still, even after it generates the code, you still have to go in most times, 99% of the time, tweak it, change it, modify it. Because if you're going to work at a Meta, if you're going to work at an Apple, if you're going to work at a Google, most of the things that you create are going to need to integrate into existing pipelines, to existing code bases that you're working with. So if you don't know how to take what you created in the AI assistant and change that, modify that to fit into the existing pipeline of code, the existing code base that you're doing, it's not going to work. You can ask Chat GPT, Claude, whomever to write all this stuff, but if you don't know how to take that and put it into what the existing code is that you're modifying, updating, adding to whatever, it's none of this stuff is really going to help you. And I think if you're going to use AI in the traditional setting of coding interviews, there are things that you can assess that will let you know if the person is if they know what, one, if they know what they're doing, and two, if they are a good engineer and understand. And I think that's where it's going to come into play. They're not just going to say, hey, blanket, here's AI, create something. They're going to create scenarios where you have to generate this code using AI, but it's not going to be just saying, hey, type in, I want an app that does XYZ. No, they're going to make it a little bit more complex to make sure that you understand the fundamentals of software engineering, the fundamentals of design, and all of those things. So, I think it's a good idea. I think the way they implement this is going to be interesting. And based on the article, they are testing it out with existing employees. And that's the way that they are creating the code challenges that they're going to present to interviewees. So I think it's better. AI isn't going anywhere. It's better to embrace it and modify it for it to work best in your company, in your organization, to be able to assess talent.
I don't trust it. Let me tell you why. Because it's coming from Meta, and we just talked about how not just about, we've talked about in recent shows about how Zuckerberg is trying to, well, we already know every company's trying to integrate AI into everything just so they can
Mhm,
say they're not left off, right?
mhm,
Zuckerberg recently has been trying to poach a lot of AI people from these other companies.
mhm,
And I believe that this whole, oh, we're going to let our employees utilize AI, not because they really want to, but
mhm,
because they think that's going to attract employees. That's going to attract people to get hired for these jobs because AI is exciting, AI is new, while Apple, while Google, while Netflix, while all these other companies are like, nah, you can't, you got to show us whatever, right? You can't use AI,
mhm,
right? Meta's like, come on over here and you get to utilize AI in your interview process in the hopes that we're going to make AI better for interviewing because we're using AI in our companies. So it makes sense for you to use AI into getting the job to use AI at the company. I think they just trying to poach more people and try to make sure Meta is on the forefront of AI, which again, I can't knock your hustle, Zuckerberg. All these companies are in competition, and what do they say? How are you going to set yourself apart from other people?
mhm,
Are any of these other companies not named Meta using AI, letting job candidates utilize AI in the testing interviews? They're not. But guess who is? Meta. You know what that does? Set them apart. So they're like, bet we're going to use it. Now, again, I don't trust Zuckerberg. I don't trust Facebook, Meta enough to believe that they're actually going to. Let me read some of these quotes here. Mark Zuckerberg says, we're obviously, no, this is not Zuckerberg, this is somebody else. They say, we're obviously focused on using AI to help engineers with their day to day work. So it should be no surprise that we're testing on how to provide these tools to applicants during interviews, a Meta spokesperson said in a statement. And this is Zuckerberg's line. Probably in 2025, we at Meta, as well as other companies that are basically working on this, are going to have an AI that can effectively be a sort of mid level engineer that you have at your company that can write code, he said on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. I'm out. No, thank you. I mean, yes, all the things you said, Nica, are very noble. All the things you said makes perfect sense for any other company other than Mark Zuckerberg's led Meta. So that's where I step off the train.
So hopefully they do mention in this article that Anthropic, which is the the best way I can put it is Anthropic is the ethical version of ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
And initially, Anthropic said folks can't use AI assistants. I've interviewed at Anthropic and I can validate that is what they said. But they have apparently reversed course on that.
Oh.
So while I get what you're saying about Meta and not trusting them because they prove that in
Mm-hmm.
a lot of situations they haven't been trustworthy. My goal, I'm looking at this on the altruistic side as someone who actually has to go through this
Mm-hmm.
process
That makes sense.
or someone who has to do this process for someone else.
There's hope. Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where for me the hope is for when I even read this was to see that there's a shift and to see that if Meta starts this off or starts this conversation off, that
Sure.
maybe other companies will
More
say, you know what,
trustworthy. Yeah.
this makes sense. So while
Mm-hmm.
it may not necessarily be trustworthy on the Meta front, some of these other companies, if they allow themselves to step out of the
Explore.
traditional, we got to make it hard. We got to make
Mm-hmm.
them sweat. We got to give them even more anxiety
Mm-hmm.
about doing an interview to say, you know what? We actually are using this in the company. So there, it kind of makes sense that we see how people use this type of technology before we bring them in. Because if you do hire them, they are going to use it. And you want to me, it would make sense to upfront know that a person, because again, using AI is a science in itself. Knowing how to prompt, knowing the tools, knowing how to word your prompts to be able to get the result that you want. Because, like, again, like I said, you can ask it to give you a snippet of code that does XYZ. But if you don't understand what the code is, if you don't understand how to use it, it's like, okay, this sounds, ChatGPT said I could use this, so this is what I'm going to use. Not necessarily knowing that there are different nuances that you need to understand to be able to actually have an impact with this. So, my hope is when I read this is hopefully the tide is changing and people are starting to embrace what this technology is and how people are actually using it in the companies that you're interviewing for, that you're hiring for, and take some of the additional, I guess, stigma away from saying you're quote unquote cheating when the employees that you're hiring, they probably use ChatGPT to come up with some of these questions, or they probably use ChatGPT to verify. Because in my mind, I'm thinking if I'm asking someone, hey, this is the problem that I need you to solve in this interview, I'm running the same thing through ChatGPT, through Anthropic. And to me, that's kind of how you're validating or saying, is this person coming up with this on their own? Or are they using one of these tools to do this? So I hope, even if Meta doesn't have altruistic intentions behind this, I hope that some other companies are and that they actually do um, think about this and try to find ways that work for them to implement this. So I guess time will tell. We'll see if Meta is using this in the right way or And or if other companies are going to say, you know what, this kind of doesn't make sense if we do it the right way for our company. So I guess we'll see if this actually has legs or not. All right, let's head over to For the Culture, where we talk what's going on in our culture and community around us. So I heard about this app, and at first, I people were talking about tea. I thought they were talking about Spill, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
let me go over to Spill and see. I didn't realize Spill was doing this. Turns out it's
Mm-hmm.
a whole completely different app. So the app that started out as a way for women to
Mm-hmm.
help protect other women has turned into something that actually is causing harm to women. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if anybody, I'm pretty sure they have because this has been pretty big news on the quote unquote data breach end of things, even though I don't think this is a full breach. The app is called T, and it was founded by a software developer named Sean Cook, who was inspired to create this anonymous whisper network after witnessing his own mother's terrifying dating experiences with men. So basically, it's one of those things where it's an app for women to go on and say, hey, this guy did this to me, this guy did that. Kind of red flag, say, hey, if you run across this guy, he's not a good dude, he may have ulterior motives. Where the issue comes in is in order to use this app, you have
Mm-hmm.
to verify who you are.
Mm-hmm.
A selfie to make sure that you're an actual person, and an ID. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like a two-prong approach to verify that you are who you say you are, because this is, again, a whisper network where you're giving information to help other people without completely, putting your, outing who you are. Well, the problem with this is on July 25th, 72,000 images, including 13,000 selfies and driver's license, as well as 59,000 other images, were published on the app. They're saying that this was a breach, and many of the downloaded images were posted publicly on 4chan. So that's big enough as it is. I've seen a lot of chatter on social media, and why I said it's a so-called breach, it appears someone put a snippet of the code on there. They were using a public database that wasn't secured to store these images. So these are verifiable IDs. Some people use driver's license. I think I saw somewhere that someone used an actual government. They work for the government ID. Someone took a picture, and the background was like a secret air base. All these things. So it's bad enough that it starts out as a way for women to protect women, but the the worst part of this is the men's right people, since there's a public database with these images, they've gotten all of these images and they've
Mm-hmm.
posted them. And there's like this map of the
Mm-hmm.
United States that shows like all locations. This is basically covers the full United States. And so
Mm-hmm.
now they're using this as a way to quote unquote out women
Mm-hmm.
who have been basically talking crap to
Mm-hmm.
them. And to them, I mean the men's right people. And this is like, see, this is what they get for trying to, be all helping other women not to get harmed. This is what they get for putting on there. Now we have all their information, and now it's
Mm-hmm.
all kind of floating about. So this was the initial breach. There's a secondary breach
Mm-hmm.
where DMs, where people were talking directly with each other,
Mm-hmm.
have leaked as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where what started as something that was supposed to be helpful and
Mm-hmm.
protective
Mm-hmm.
of women has now turned into something that's completely harmful, because now what do? You have a copy of someone's actual driver's license, and
Mm-hmm.
you know what all goes on a driver's license. So to me, that's the dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And sad part of this, and I think I saw somewhere that there's a what's the word I'm looking for? Class action lawsuit um that's going on with this now because they were so the it was a I was looking for the name of the database, and it was Firebase, which is a Google uh backend cloud storage service. So yeah, all this stuff is out there when it was supposed to be one of those things that's helpful.
Yep. The fact that women had to upload their driver's license should have, again, I'm not a developer, I'm not in DevOps, I'm not in privacy, and I'm not in security. But any app service that requires you to upload personally identifiable information like a driver's license
PII. Hmm.
should have figured out better ways to protect and secure this data. I
Hmm.
think what happened was they had an app and it was out for a while and women used it. Maybe some women saw it beneficial. Maybe there were some women who were just, I mean, it's possible women they're out there, defaming some men, maybe some,
Hmm.
different interpretations of the same thing, whatever the case may be, right?
Hmm.
When the app got popular and it had this influx of women using it, and as a result, had an influx of people talking about it, that should have been another opportunity
Hmm.
for the developers to say, hey, let's make sure this is on the legit, make sure it's secure. We've got all these users, women's data, because I mean, we see what happened, right? They leaked some of the data. Some other people got hold of the data. They already had an axe to grind for the app for the first reason. And now you gave them ammunition as to why this shouldn't exist, right?
Hmm.
Unfortunately, like I mentioned, women, were using this to try to be of assistance to other women. But, I hate to say it, but women got let down yet again
Again.
by the app developers. Again, like I said, I've used apps. Turo, for example, is an
Hmm.
app that you have to use in order to verify who you are, because I'm not about to give you my car if I don't know who you
Right.
I don't know who you are. So you have to take a picture of yourself, take a picture of
Hmm.
your driver's license, and hold the driver's license next to your face while you take a picture, right? So
Hmm.
this is not a app requiring people to upload a driver's license is not new. It's not
It's
few and
not
far between.
uncommon at all.
So, having said that, you would assume that this app would follow the same guidelines, would be, and then some, because these are primarily women, and we
Yeah.
know men are out there that already have a axe to grind against
Right.
women. Case in point, the men got upset. They created a opposition app to the T app, but instead of men saying, hey, that's a good idea. We're going to use an app to warn other men about some of these women out here that we don't
Problematic
want.
women.
Right,
Right.
right. They didn't do that. They put
Mm-mm.
revenge, they put revenge porn up.
Yeah.
So knowing that men are going to do that, I
Yeah.
would have liked this app to be a little bit and then some more secure than your average app because of
Yeah.
who's using it and the information that they have to give up in order to use it.
And what's interesting is I saw one screenshot, that's what I was looking for on my phone, that basically in the app, when it says that after you upload, it's like your images will be deleted after verify. The app didn't do that. That was on the screenshot from the actual app. Is after you upload your images, they will be deleted. We now know
Yep.
that is not the case. Not only will they not be deleted, but they're on a publicly available database. Yeah. So this is almost like how when someone's identity is stolen, like you can't go back to before your information was out there. The only thing you can do at this point is mitigate the fallout. How do you mitigate the fallout? When it has your birthday, your address, some of your biometrical information. Um, but now you got to move. Like, I don't know. I don't know. So I don't know what these, what, 13,000 women are going to do. And even more so, people who took images from when they were at work, um, or in locations that were sensitive that weren't supposed to be shown. And God knows what other these other 59,000 images are. It's the company said they're doing an investigation. They, you know, pulled the access. But like I said, at this point, the information is out there. The internet is forever. So now all you can do is try and mitigate the fallout. And I feel so bad for the people who participated in this with the understanding that they would be safe and that they would be protected, and they're not. And it's like, what do you do? How do you proceed? And I saw the statement that the T app made. And unless they send an additional email to tell people, things that they could do, or ways that they're going to help them, um, I don't know. I don't know. It's pretty rough. This is pretty bad. This is pretty bad. Best of luck to all these women. I hope you're able to find some sort of peace around your this level of PI information being exposed to the world and to the internet. Best of luck to them, and I hope this company um, gets it together and does something to not only fix their app, but to help these 13,000 women as well. So I don't think, again, this is going to be the end of anything. I think it's more to come at a later date, but at least for now, this is where we are with this. Next up, the hookup for our tech tip of the week.
Yep. And we've been talking about AI, we've been talking about privacy, and we've been talking about security. I am a cynic. I have been avoiding AI at all costs for obvious reasons. But I was doing some research and I found this AI chatbot called Lumo by Proton. Proton is a company that has a secure VPN service. They also have a secure email service. Their whole thing is privacy and security. So they have released a chatbot called Lumo. And the reason why I'm talking about it, because I'm actually trying it out, because my main concerns about AI is it ain't safe. They are using our data to train their models and not giving us a piece. And they are selling our data to data brokers who use that data for a whole host of reasons. So the reason why I'm starting to gravitate towards Lumo is because of the features that it has. One of the things it lists is no chat logs. They are not keeping your data, they're not keeping your chats, they're not reading them, they're not logging them. They're not doing any of those things as far as your actual conversations with the chatbot. They have something called zero access encryption, meaning they can't encrypt your data. They can't decrypt your data, rather. Only you and your device, because the way the Lumo AI chatbot works is it's on device encryption. So whether you're using your computer, whether you're using your phone, your tablet, whatever the case may be, those encryptions are between you and the service, or your chatbot rather. It's not between Lumo. They can't get access to that. Another thing is open source, meaning anybody, any data professionals, any coders, any developers can go look at the open source and validate that they are not selling your data. They are not stealing the logs and reading the logs. They are not, they can't decrypt the data. They put the information out there and say, have at it. And then the final one, the data is not sold to brokers. The information that I share, upload, talk about is not being packaged up and resold. So if you are interested in using AI, but you're a little squeamish like I am, check out Lumo. Again, they've got a free version to where you can talk for free. And of course, all the things you can only do so many chats. You can only do so many things before you run up against the, call it the paywall. But then if you choose, I think they are charging like $12 a month, between 12 and 20. I can't remember exactly what it is. Again, I ain't paying for no AI yet. So I don't know what the price is, but it's from what I've seen with the others, it's pretty comparable. So if you're interested in checking out a AI, a chatbot that's a little more secure, and you can better trust that they are not going to sell or read your data, check out Lumo. We've got a link in the show notes.
Nice. And with that, that's going to wrap up the show for this week. Brother Tech, where can the people find you?
You can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BrothaTech.
And you can find me all of the interwebs at Tech Savvy Diva. Also, if you are listening to this show when it is broadcast to the public, I will be on DTNS on Friday, which is today for those listening to the recorded show. So check that out. With that being said, to connect, to share, to support our show, definitely go on over to snobblewestcast.com and get all the details. And with that, we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.